How much is my brother's life worth? Her voice sounded too loud. Not because the girl was shouting, she wasn't. But her words, steeped in despair, sliced through the air like a shard of broken glass. The crowd froze. It went quiet in the hall. Those who, just a minute ago, had been applauding, snapping photos on their phones, whispering among themselves, suddenly fell silent. Their faces turned toward her like a sudden clap of thunder on a clear day. A 10-year-old girl stood at the microphone, clutching a crumpled sheet of paper. Her thin fingers curled into a fist as if she were gripping her last hope. On stage, under the soft glow of the spotlights, sat the First Lady of the United States in an immaculate white suit. Melania Trump's eyes met the girl's. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Her voice was steady, but a faint note of surprise slipped through. The girl swallowed hard. She was breathing heavily, as though she had climbed a mountain that was too high. "How much is my brother's life worth?" she repeated more softly now. Somewhere in the back of the hall, someone coughed nervously. Someone else shifted uncomfortably in their seat. "My name is Ellison. My brother's name is James. He saved me and got hit by a car." Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. She just clenched her fist tighter, crumpling the paper even more. "He's in the hospital now. The doctors say he'll die without surgery, but it's too expensive. They told my mom she doesn't have that kind of money. I don't have a dad. No one will help us. So I thought, maybe you would know how much his life costs. Maybe it can be bought, like a car, like a house, like a dress, like everything you have, and they have, and all these people have." She turned sharply to face the crowd. "How much is my brother worth?" A woman in the front row, her hair carefully styled and a strand of pearlescent pearls at her neck, looked away. A man in a business suit frowned. People lowered their phones. Melania did not look away. "Did you come here by yourself?" The girl nodded. "Where's your mom?" "She's with James. She's sitting in the hallway. They won't let her into his room. She hasn't slept all night. I couldn't just sit there. I came here because you're the only one who can answer me." Ellison took a step closer, right to the edge of the stage. "If it were your son, would you find the money?" The audience flinched. The woman sitting next to Melania leaned toward her cautiously, but the First Lady raised her hand, stopping her. The girl squeezed the paper so hard her knuckles turned white. "I wrote a prayer. If money won't help, maybe God will. But I don't know if he hears me." She unfolded the paper and began to read, barely breathing. "Lord, if you can, take my life instead of his. Make him open his eyes. Make him laugh again. I'll give everything I have. I know I don't have much, but I can try to be good. I promise I'll never be lazy again. I won't say bad words. I won't throw tantrums. I won't even ask for Christmas presents. Just please bring him back. Please." She fell silent. Someone in the hall sobbed quietly. Melania Trump rose slowly. She walked to the edge of the stage. "You shouldn't have to give your life, Ellison. Children shouldn't have to bargain with God." She leaned down, took the girl's hand and squeezed it firmly. At that moment, a flood of memories washed over Ellison once more. "Hold on to me!" James gripped his sister's wrist tightly as they crossed the road. Ellison always got annoyed when her brother spoke to her that way, as though she were a little kid, as though he alone was responsible for her. She was old enough. She could watch for cars on her own. "I'm not a child, Jay. You almost ran right into the street, Al." He smirked and ruffled her hair. She rolled her eyes and shoved his hand away. They were walking home, chatting about random things, how they were having pasta for dinner again, how the homework at school was silly, how James had a history project to present tomorrow, and of course hadn't done anything for it. "Why does the teacher even need this paper?" he sighed. "Who cares when that stupid factory opened?" "Well, it's interesting," Ellison teased. "It's the factory our great-grandma worked at. You'd know that if you ever listened to Mom." "Oh, right," he said, thinking it over. "Fine. Maybe I'll slap something together by morning. Maybe Mom can help. Al, I'm not a little kid anymore. I don't need Mom doing my assignments for me." She was about to argue, but just then they heard an engine roar ahead of them. It was loud, growling, and it crawled right under her skin. A black SUV suddenly veered onto their street. "Hey, watch out!" James yelled, but the car only sped up. Too fast. Too close. She didn't have time to react. Didn't have time to think. She only saw her brother's eyes go wide. Saw his arm slam into her shoulder, sharp, painful, without hesitation. Saw the ground vanish from beneath her feet. Saw herself land hard on the asphalt. And then the sound. A dull, wet, horrifying thud. The air filled with the screech of brakes. Tires swerved sharply. The car came to a stop. For a split second, everything was silent. Then came a scream. Her own. James lay on the road, his body twisted in a way that didn't look right. Blood was spreading across the pavement, hot as molten wax. James! Ellison rushed to him, but a firm voice stopped her. Don't touch him! It was a man who'd run out from the house across the street. But she didn't listen. She crawled over to her brother, her hands trembling as she touched his face. Jay! He wasn't moving. Help! She screamed. Everything around her blurred. Footsteps, shouting, people running out of their houses, someone already calling an ambulance. The driver got out of the car, a tall man in a business suit, his face white as paper. Oh, God. I didn't see. He ran out. You were going too fast, someone in the crowd shouted. I didn't mean. What the hell are you doing speeding on a residential street? The man lifted his shaking hands to his face. But Ellison couldn't hear him. She only saw her brother, his hair matted with blood, his lips slightly parted, as if he wanted to say something but never got the chance. He's not breathing. He's not. Her voice broke off. A neighbor grabbed her by the shoulders. Sweetheart, don't look. The ambulance will be here soon. But she kept looking. She saw someone start CPR on her brother, saw the sirens slicing through the evening air, flooding the street with flashing lights, saw the paramedics lift James onto a stretcher. We'll do everything we can, but he's losing too much blood. I'm going with him, she yelled, but someone held her back by the shoulders. Wait for your parents, child. She tore free. No, he's alone. I have to go with him. But they were already loading the stretcher into the ambulance. Everything in her head turned into a roar, a swirling maelstrom of fear, pain, and panic. She ran after the ambulance, but someone stopped her. You can't go, honey. Wait for your mom. But she already knew. She already knew she would never, ever forget the sound of that impact. That she would never forget how her brother pushed her aside without a moment's hesitation. That she would never forget how, in one instant, everything normal shattered into darkness. And then from somewhere far away, she heard her mother's voice. Where is he? Where's my boy? Ellison turned. Her mother's face was pale, her hair disheveled, her eyes filled with panic. Where's James? Ellison couldn't answer. She could only look at the ambulance sirens fading into the distance. Everything after that felt like a blur. No, this has to be a mistake. You have to do something. Ellison's mother repeated the same words over and over, like a spell, trying to break the nightmare that had trapped them. The doctor ran a tired hand over his face. Mrs. Reed, I understand, but we don't have a magic wand. Your son is in critical condition. Skull fracture, massive blood loss, internal bleeding. Then operate, Ellison cried out, clenching her fists. She stood beside her mother, her legs shaking, but her voice steady. He needs surgery. Why aren't you doing anything? The doctor looked at her as if he wanted to explain something very simple, but couldn't find the words. Surgery costs money, young lady. Silence. How much? Her mother whispered. Around $200,000. The air rushed out of her lungs as if someone had punched her in the chest. We can't pay that much right away. Then there's nothing more to discuss. He turned to leave, but her mother grabbed his sleeve. Please. He's my son. Isn't his life worth more than money? The man exhaled heavily. I'm not allowed to perform the operation without guaranteed payment. This hospital isn't a charity. Her mother slowly shook her head. But if we can't find the money, he'll... Yes. That cold, unbearable reply cut through them like a knife. Ellison felt her legs go weak. She saw her mother cover her face with her hands, saw the doctors walking back and forth as if nothing terrible was happening, as if her brother were just another patient, not her James. And then she understood. No one would help. No one but her. She spun around and ran, ignoring her mother's shouts. The crowd in the hall was still buzzing. Ellison felt a lump rise in her throat, but she kept speaking. You're asking why I came here? Because I don't know where else to go. I thought hospitals save people, but all they do is count money. They told us, you have until morning or he'll die. And we don't have $200,000. All we have is faith. Someone in the hall sobbed. She looked straight into the First Lady's eyes. I'm not asking you as someone important, not as the president's wife. I'm asking you as a person who has children. Melania remained silent. Ellison swallowed. Would you let your son die if you couldn't come up with the money right away? Silence was deafening. The journalist's cameras froze. Someone in the audience dropped a pen. And in that very moment, everything changed. Melania Trump did not look away. She gazed straight at the girl, into her large, despair-filled eyes. A hush fell over the auditorium. The crowd held its breath, as if afraid to shatter the moment. Next to the First Lady, someone shifted nervously. A man in a suit leaned in and whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. Would you let your son die if you couldn't come up with the money right away? Ellison repeated the question, and this time her voice sounded different. Not merely desperate, but demanding. Melania slowly leaned forward, her fingers interlaced. When I was about your age, Ellison, I saw a child die. People in the audience exchanged glances. It was a little girl, my neighbor. She got sick, but our family didn't have the money to help. Neither did hers. Back then, there were no charities, no fundraising campaigns. There was just money or the lack of it. She paused as if recalling the memory. I remember how her mother went door to door, knocking, begging for anything at all. And I remember how people turned away. They felt sorry. They said it was terrible. They nodded inside. But no one gave any money. Because no one wanted to answer that question. Ellison didn't move. I saw her buried in a cheap coffin. Saw her mother standing at the cemetery, her eyes hollow, as though she died along with her daughter. A woman in the audience pressed her lips together. Someone else stifled a sob. How much is a life worth? Melania repeated. When I hear that question, I go back to that day. To the moment I realize that money isn't just comfort or luxury. It's the line between who lives and who might not be here tomorrow. She turned to face the crowd, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent that sent chills through everyone listening. Today, in this very hall, there are people who could produce that money without a second thought. People for whom that amount is less than the cost of a single dinner. They could donate it and move on as though nothing had changed. A stir rippled through the hall. Some people averted their eyes. But everything would change. She looked at Ellison. Because if we do nothing, we're all part of this crime. We're all part of that crowd standing by at the funeral, never reaching out, until it's too late. Melania reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. In a matter of seconds, she scribbled a few digits. She raised the check above her head. 100,000. The audience gasped. Ellison stood frozen. That's half. Melania let her gaze sweep slowly across the audience. Where's the other half? Silence. No one moved. Are you prepared to look this girl in the eye and tell her that her brother's life isn't worth your money? A woman in a pearl necklace shifted uncomfortably. Are you ready to learn his name from an obituary? Someone shot to their feet. 10,000 from me. 15. I'll give 20. The crowd stirred, came alive. People reached for wallets and phones, calling assistance, shouting out amounts. Journalists' cameras whirred and clicked, capturing it all. Ellison felt her head spin. Someone took her hand. She looked up. Melania, it's going to be all right. We'll raise what you need. And at that moment, the hall erupted in applause. The hall turned into a seething volcano, roiling, explosive, unstoppable. People shouted out amounts. Some were calling their assistants, transferring money right from their phones. Several journalists were already typing up headlines. 5,000. I'll give 30. 50,000 from our foundation. I've just written a check for 10. It was as though the crowd had awakened from a long sleep. Their paralysis gave way to action. Their remorse became an attempt at redemption. On stage, Melania stood with her checkbook in hand, watching as the very people who had been silent only moments ago now frantically reached for their wallets, checked their balances, and decided how much they could give without disturbing their usual comfort. Ellison remained still. She stared at it all with wide eyes, unable to believe that her voice, her pain, Her plea could have affected these people so profoundly. Her heart pounded. But suddenly, a silence. That voice sliced through the air like glass shattering on a marble floor. All heads turned. A tall man in an expensive suit rose from the front row. He was impeccably dressed, his cufflinks gleaming under the lights, and he carried himself like someone used to having the final say. "I'll cover the entire amount." A dense hush fell over the auditorium like a heavy, tangible veil. The woman in the pearl necklace bit her lip. The journalist in the front row froze, phone in midair. "I'll pay the full sum, right now." He stepped forward slowly, took out his checkbook, and wrote down several figures. Then he looked up. "But only on one condition." Ellison went rigid. "The girl will say thank you and stop turning this into a circus." A moment, deafening, like a bolt of lightning tearing through the air. Camera flashes flared even brighter. The hall stirred again, people whispering. Ellison felt something twist inside her chest. "A circus?" She didn't say it loudly, but her voice cut through the commotion, through the rustle of money, through the weight of indifference. "My brother is dying, and you call this a circus?" The man shrugged. "It's a tragedy, sure. But let's be honest. You wanted a show, and now you've got it. The money's been raised. Let's just settle this." He held out the check. Melania did not take it. Ellison clenched her fists. "No." Everything around them froze. The man frowned. "What?" She took a step forward. "No, this isn't a circus. You don't care about me or my brother. I'm asking from the bottom of my heart. But you. The rumble in the crowd grew louder. He gave a condescending smirk, trying to maintain his composure. "You're 10 years old. You don't know what you're saying. Money is all that matters in situations like this. You'll get it. Don't be foolish." Ellison stared straight into his cold, indifferent eyes. "My brother is not for sale." "Oh, stop it. Take the money and get to the hospital," someone shouted from the crowd. "Did you hear her?" This voice no longer belonged to the girl. It was Melania. She raised her head slowly, her gaze as cold and unyielding as steel. "Do you really want this child, who came here begging for her brother's life, to thank you for turning it into a transaction?" The man narrowed his eyes. "It's just money." "No." Her voice was firm, without a single tremor. "It's the price of your soul." He froze. A collective gasp swept the hall. The woman in pearls stared down at her hands. The journalist put away his phone. And then, "I'll cover the rest," someone shouted from the balcony. "Me too. I'm in." New amounts were tossed into the air. Assistants were already making transfers. Some people were signing checks on their knees. Money poured in from those who believed, from those who realized this wasn't mere charity. It was a choice, life or death. And that man no longer mattered. He stood in the middle of the auditorium where no one was listening to him anymore. His cheeks flushed. He tried to say something, but then Ellison looked at him, directly, without blinking, the way her brother had taught her when someone tried to bully her at school. "No one needs your check." He ground his teeth, then slowly put his checkbook away and turned on his heel, leaving the hall under a barrage of camera flashes. Ellison exhaled. Melania looked at her. "Now let's go see your brother." And the girl nodded. "Are you ready?" Ellison didn't answer. She just nodded, tightening her grip on Melania Trump's slender fingers. All around them the storm still raged. People in the hall continued to murmur. Some were finalizing their checks, others issuing instructions to their assistants. Journalists were already calling newsrooms, shouting headlines, while camera operators recorded without pause. But the girl no longer heard them. She heard only the pounding of her heart. She heard someone say, "The car is ready. We're taking you to the hospital." And coincidental. Whoever said it no longer mattered. Ellison felt a strong hand from Melania push her forward. "Let's go!" They made their way through the hall as if slicing through it with a knife. People parted, eyes followed them. Cameras turned in their direction, flashes striking their faces. Ellison couldn't see where they were headed. She just knew she had to go. A black motorcade with presidential plates raced through the city streets. Ellison sat on a leather seat, her back pressed against the cold surface. Melania sat beside her, her expression unreadable. Yet something roiled in her eyes that the girl couldn't decipher. The First Lady's phone vibrated nonstop. News headlines were already exploding. First Lady of the USA rushed to hospital with 10-year-old girl. Scandal at charity event. Girl forces billionaires to remember what it means to be human. How much is a life worth? The question that brought America to its knees. The car pulled up to the hospital. The door opened and Ellison leaped from the car, her feet barely touching the ground. She ran. She sprinted down the corridor, bumping into people without hearing their shouts. "Where is my brother?" "Ellison!" Hands. Her mother's hands. They grabbed her tightly, so firmly that it hurt, so hard it nearly broke her. "Where were you?" The girl burst into tears. "We found the money." "Are they doing the surgery?" Her mother's face was pale, her eyes red. "No." Time seemed to stop. "What?" "They said it's too late, that his chances are too slim, that they can't take the risk." "Don't they know who's here?" That voice rang out like a shot. People in the corridor froze. Melania Trump stood in the doorway, her silhouette chiseled like stone. Silence struck the air. Doctors, nurses, staff, everyone halted. The chief doctor, a short man with narrow eyes and a weary face, straightened up while clutching a folder of documents to his chest. "Mrs. Trump, I didn't ask you to explain anything." She stepped toward him, locking eyes with him. "I said they are doing the surgery now, but it's very complicated. Are you afraid?" Silence. "Are you afraid that if you can't save the boy, it will look bad? That I won't cover your sponsorship? That your status will drop? Are you afraid?" The doctor's lips trembled. "We can't guarantee success." "Guarantee success?" Melania's voice pierced the air. "You haven't even tried. Do you want him to die just because you're not sure of the outcome?" Allison's chest heaved, her breathing faltering. Melania kept her gaze fixed on the doctor. "Are you afraid?" she repeated. He swallowed hard. Then slowly he turned. "Prepare the operating room. Immediately." Allison's mother broke into tears again, her legs buckled as she sank onto a chair. The girl simply stood there, seemingly swallowed by her own fear, pain, and hope. The operating room doors swung open. Doctors began to rush about. There were cries, orders, white coats, sterile gloves, a stretcher carrying her brother. His face was pale, too pale. She saw the doctors take his hands and feet, hook up IV lines, shouting instructions to one another, and then closing the door behind him. A click. Ellison held her breath. Then the light above the operating room turned red. It had begun. The red light above the operating room door burned like an alarm. Ellison sat there, fists clenched so tightly that her fingers turned white, and her nails dug into her skin. The corridor reeked of antiseptic, vending machine coffee, and fear. Beside her, her mother was present. She no longer cried. She just stared blankly at the wall, devoid of expression, emotion, or strength. Melania stood by the window, her phone vibrating incessantly, again and again, endlessly. "Any news?" she asked quietly. One of her assistants, a tall man in a black suit, coughed. "The whole country already knows." Headlines? "Deadly race. Can the First Lady save the boy?" "America watches and waits. Whose life matters more? The child's or the image's?" "They're hungry for blood." The man said nothing more. Of course they craved blood. If the boy died, the nation would turn against the hospital, against the doctors, against everyone who allowed this to happen. But if he survived, no one would remember that they were reluctant to operate. People remember only the tragedy, not those who prevented it. Ellison didn't hear the conversation. She just stared at the door. "Why is it taking so long?" she murmured. She didn't realize she was speaking aloud until Melania replied, "He's fighting." Ellison shot her a sharp look. "Do you really believe that? Or are you just saying it to calm me down?" The First Lady met her gaze directly. "I think your brother is stronger than all of them put together." An hour passed. Then another. Someone brought tea to Allison's mother, but she didn't even touch it. Journalists were no longer allowed inside the hospital, yet they still lingered outside. Reporters crowded at the entrance, cameras fixed on the windows, while cars with flashing lights slowly circled the building. "His pulse is dropping." The doctors worked as one unified organism. "Blood pressure is unstable. We need more blood." "Damn it, he's losing it faster than we can infuse." A surgeon, a man in his 50s, wiped his forehead with the back of a sterile glove. "We're losing him." A nurse froze. "What?" "Initiate the defibrillator." "Damn." Allison flinched as if she'd sensed something. Melania noticed her knuckles turning white. "What's wrong?" The girl wanted to speak, but at that moment the light above the operating room began to flicker. She froze. "Why is it flashing?" No one knew the answer. "Charge!" James's body jerked. "No pulse! Charge again!" "Damn it, don't you dare give up, kid." Allison stood up. "No, no, no, no." Her breathing became ragged. "What's happening to him?" No one knew. The light continued to flicker. She felt something tighten inside her. "He can't die!" Suddenly her legs buckled, and she collapsed to her knees right before the door. She closed her eyes. "Lord, if you really can." She didn't know what to say. She just whispered, come on, damn it. One more charge." The red light flashed, and then went out. Allison lifted her head. "What?" Silence. Absolute silence. Then, a click. The operating room door opened. A doctor stepped out, his face etched with fatigue. He looked first at Allison's mother, then at Melania, and finally at the girl. Then he opened his mouth to say one single word. "We got him back." The doctor's words hung in the air like something intangible, a dream on the verge of fading, leaving behind an emptiness. Allison's mother sniffled, but the girl didn't move. Her heart beat so slowly that she felt as if time itself had slowed, stretched, and warped. "What?" The doctor slowly removed his mask, running his hand over his sweaty forehead. "We lost him for 3 minutes." A low, overwhelming murmur rose, as if dark waters had surged up and engulfed her. 3 minutes. James was... No, don't think about it. But is he alive? The doctor nodded. His heart started again. "We stopped the bleeding, but he's in a coma." Coma, a word that hung in the air like a verdict. "How long?" her mother asked, her voice hoarse, as if it had shattered along with her reality. "We don't know. Don't know. Don't know. Don't know." Allison watched his lips move, saw them forming sounds, yet she heard nothing. All she could see was the door behind which her brother lay. May I go to him?" Just for a minute. She felt her legs trembling in betrayal, but she stepped forward. The ward was white, so pristine it made you want to scream. The scent of medicine assaulted the nostrils, shattering consciousness. Machines, tubes, electrodes. James lay motionless. If not for the sound of the ventilator, one might have thought he was no longer there. Allison moved closer. "Jay." She reached out and touched his fingers. They were warm. I found the money. People gave it. Because I asked. Because I screamed. Because they couldn't just stand by and watch. She swallowed hard, feeling a lump in her throat grow heavier. "You can't just lie here. I won't allow it. I've fought for you for too long. You don't have the right to leave." Silence. Deafening. Ominous. Her fingers squeezed his hand tighter. "Can you hear me?" She leaned closer, her whisper turning piercing. "You must come back. Because if you don't, if you dare to leave, I'll never forgive you." The monitors beeped, steady lines on the screen showing no reaction. "Jay!" Her voice broke. She lowered her head as tears streamed down her cheeks, dropping onto the sheet. "I can't lose you." She squeezed her eyes shut, and then she felt it. A light, almost imperceptible movement. His fingers. Warm. Alive. They weakly, almost imperceptibly, squeezed her hand. Allison froze. Her heart seemed to leap out of her chest. "Mom!" She sprang to her feet and bolted to the door. "Mom, he..." But the word stuck in her throat. Because at that moment, the monitor emitted a deafening alarm. The line on the screen jerked, and then, steady, a beep, even and endless. "No!" The door burst open. Doctors rushed in. They pushed her back with their hands. Screams. Machines. Commotion. "What happened?" "Pulse lost. Get the defibrillator ready." A loud crack of an electric shock filled the air. "Again!" Allison stood in the doorway. They wouldn't let her in, but she saw. She saw her brother convulse repeatedly with each shock. Saw a doctor clench his jaw as he barked orders. Saw everything around her blur into a torrent of sound and light. And in that moment, she screamed, "James!" Everything stopped. "James!" Everything collapsed. Beep. Discharges. The silhouettes of doctors, crowding around the operating table, moved in a jagged rhythm, as if the world had become entangled in its own time. Ellison wasn't breathing. Her voice, which shattered the silence, sounded like a final, desperate plea to God, to fate, to anyone who could still save her brother. The doctor gritted his teeth. "One last discharge." "He won't make it," muttered the nurse. "Do it. Right now." Hands clenched on the defibrillator. Discharge. James's body jerked. Monitor. Beep. An instant. The world was frozen. And then a surge. Weak, barely perceptible, but it was there. A pulse. "He's back!" Voices erupted like a storm. Some exhaled, some nearly dropped their instruments, but not Ellison. She was still standing, frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide, her fists clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. "James, he's here." Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like eternity. When the doctors finally emerged from the ward, Ellison's mother sprang to her feet. "What about him?" The chief doctor removed his mask, looking at them with the eyes of someone who had just been through hell and lived. "He's alive." No one moved. "He pulled through the crisis, but he's still in a coma." "How long?" asked Melania. The doctor pursed his lips. "I can't say. Hours, days, maybe even longer." Ellison's mother covered her mouth with her hand. "But he's fighting, isn't he?" Ellison stepped forward. The doctor looked at her. "Yes, he's fighting." It was a victory, but not the end of the war. Ellison entered the ward. Her brother lay there, surrounded by tubes, wires, and machines that monitored every beat of his heart. She sat down beside him and took his hand. "I knew you'd come back." Tears streamed down her face, falling onto the sheet, but she wasn't crying from grief. She was crying because he was breathing. He was here. "Now it's your turn, Jay. Wake up." Silence. But this time it wasn't frightening. This time it was life. And deep inside, she felt it. "He hears me." The ward was engulfed in a thick, motionless silence. Not the kind of silence that echoes emptiness. Not the one that foretells the end. But the silence that breathes hope. Ellison sat by her brother's bedside, her palm resting on his warm, still hand. Nearby, her mother sat with tear-stained eyes and lips pressed tight, as if afraid that even the slightest relaxation might shatter her again. Melania stood by the window, calm, not the same as the poised image on stage or before the cameras, but real. She didn't speak loudly, nor did she ask how Ellison was feeling. She simply waited, as did everyone. Outside the ward, the world continued to lose its mind. Historic event. First Lady participates in saving a child. Shock and awe. America weeps with the girl who saved her brother. Who should pay for a life? How many more children are waiting for their money? Reporters gathered outside the hospital. People flooded social media with posts. Flash mobs, hashtags, live broadcasts from the scene. The nation stood frozen. It watched. It waited. But inside the ward, none of that mattered to Ellison. She could only feel time sliding over her skin, slowing down, seconds stretching into hours, and hope clutching her heart in its relentless grip. "Jay," her voice trembled, yet she continued. "You always said I talk too much, that I'm too loud, that I'm too stubborn." She squeezed his fingers. "But it seems that's exactly why you're still here, because I never give up." Closing her eyes, she began to whisper once more. "Lord." Her lips quivered, yet the words came on their own. "I know you hear me. You heard me before, or I wouldn't be sitting here now. I know you gave me the chance to save him, but he must finish this story himself." Ellison's mother pressed her hand to her lips, her shoulders trembling, while Melania slowly sank into a chair and listened. In the corridor, doctors paused at the door, as if they understood that something greater than a matter of life and death was at stake in that room. "I won't beg for myself, only for him." Taking a deep breath, Ellison continued. "Let him come back. Let him open his eyes. Let him say something silly so I can playfully hit him with a pillow. Let him call me a nag. Let him say I talk too much. Let him live." She traced her fingers along his hand. "Let him live." There was silence. The beep of monitors. The rustle of breath. A slow inhalation. An exhalation. A moment. And then, a slight movement. A twitch of his fingers. Weak but real, barely perceptible. Ellison froze. "Mom!" Her mother suddenly looked up, her eyes wide. And in that moment, James blinked. Deeply. Slowly, as if emerging from layers of sleep. His lips trembled. "Elle!" he rasped, his voice hoarse, cracked but real. "Alive." Ellison sprang to her feet. Her mother burst into tears. Melania smiled. And then someone in the corridor shouted, "He's awake!" And the world exploded. Cries. The sound of footsteps. Doctors burst into the room like a cascade of white coats. The monitors emitted sharp, rapid beeps. Lights flickered, reflecting in the glassy eyes of people who, just a moment ago, had been too afraid even to breathe. Ellison didn't move. She watched as her brother, slowly shifted his gaze from one face to another, trying to grasp what was happening. "James!" She lunged forward, but the doctors gently yet firmly pushed her back. "We need to check his condition," one of them said. But she already knew. He was here. He was alive. Everything else didn't matter. Outside the hospital, the world had lost its mind. A miracle before the eyes of the entire nation. Crying America, a girl saved her brother, First Lady Melania Trump, and an unknown heroine. The moment that changed history. The crowd of journalists had doubled in size. They swarmed the entrance, not letting anyone pass. Some shouted questions. Others were already broadcasting live. Some were photographing the glass windows of the ward, hoping to capture something unseen by anyone else. The hospital had become the epicenter of a national event. The ward was enveloped in a thick, motionless silence. Not the kind of silence that echoes emptiness. Not the kind that heralds an ending, but the kind that breathes hope. Ellison sat by her brother's bedside, her palm resting on his warm, still hand. Nearby, her mother sat with tear-streaked red eyes and lips pressed together, as if afraid that if she relaxed even for a moment, the universe might break her again. Melania stood by the window, calm, not the composed persona we'd seen on stage or in front of cameras, but real. She spoke no loud words, asked no questions about how Ellison felt. She simply waited, as did everyone. Outside the ward, the world was losing its mind. Historic event, First Lady takes part in saving a child. Crying America, girl saves her brother. Who should pay for a life? How many more children are waiting for their money? Reporters clustered outside the hospital. People flooded social media with posts. Flash mobs, hashtags, live streams from the scene. The nation stood frozen. It watched. It waited. But inside the ward, none of that stirred Ellison. She only felt time sliding across her skin, slowing down, seconds stretching into hours, and hope clutching her heart in its relentless grip. "Jay," her voice quavered, yet she continued. "You always said I talk too much, that I'm too loud, that I'm too stubborn." She squeezed his fingers. "But it seems that's exactly why you're still here, because I never give up." Closing her eyes, she began to whisper again. "Lord." Her lips trembled, yet the words flowed on their own. "I know you hear me. You heard me before. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here right now. I know you gave me the chance to save him, but he must finish this story on his own." Ellison's mother pressed a hand to her lips, her shoulders shaking, while Melania slowly sank into a chair and listened. In the corridor, doctors paused at the door, as if they understood that in this room something greater than a matter of life and death was at stake. "I won't beg for myself, only for him." Taking a deep breath, Ellison continued, "Let him come back. Let him open his eyes. Let him say something silly so I can hit him with a pillow. Let him call me a nag. Let him say I talk too much. Just let him live." She ran her fingers along his hand. "Let him live." Silence. The beeping of monitors. The rustle of breath. A slow inhale. An exhale. A moment. And then a slight movement. A twitch of his fingers. Weak but real, barely perceptible. Ellison froze. "Mom." Her mother suddenly looked up, eyes wide. And in that moment, James blinked. Deeply. Slowly, as if emerging from layers of sleep. His lips trembled. "Elle," he rasped, his voice hoarse, cracked but real. "Alive." Ellison sprang to her feet. Her mother burst into tears. Melania smiled. And then someone in the corridor shouted, "He's awake!" And the world exploded. Cries. The sound of hurried footsteps. Doctors rushed into the room like a cascade of white coats. Monitors emitted sharp, rapid beeps. Lights flickered, reflecting in the glassy eyes of those who, moments before, had been too afraid even to breathe. Ellison stood still, watching as her brother, her very own brother, slowly shifted his gaze from one face to another, trying to understand what was happening. "James!" she cried. She lunged forward, but the doctors gently yet firmly pushed her back. "We need to check his condition," one said. But she already knew he was here. He was alive. Nothing else mattered. Outside the hospital, the world had gone mad. A miracle before the nation's eyes. Crying America, a girl saves her brother. First Lady Melania Trump and the unknown heroine. The moment that changed history. The throng of journalists had doubled. They swarmed the entrance, blocking anyone from getting in. Some shouted questions, others were already live on air, while some snapped photos of the ward's glass windows, hoping to capture what no one else could. The hospital had become the epicenter of a national event. But in the ward, everything was different. "How do you feel?" James managed a hoarse smile, his cracked lips and voice as if he'd run through a storm. "Like I just got run over by a car." Ellison froze. Then she burst into laughter, a sudden nervous explosion of giggles laced with tears and despair. "You idiot," she teased. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "An idiot who saved your life?" She sniffled and playfully smacked his shoulder. Not hard, but enough to make him grimace. "You'll pay for that." James grinned, though something else flickered in his eyes. He looked at her hand, still clutching his fingers. "Did you really believe I'd come back?" She didn't answer immediately. Then she shrugged. "You had no choice." When the doctors finally allowed Ellison to be alone with her brother, Melania appeared in the room. She approached the bed and looked at the boy. "I must say, you had us all on edge." James frowned. His voice faltered. Are you really here?" His mind had not yet fully grasped what had happened. He didn't know his story had already become a national legend, didn't know that millions had watched him die and then see him resurrect. He simply stared at this woman in a perfectly tailored suit, whose eyes reflected emotions a stranger should never display. "Did you help me?" She smiled slightly. "Not me." She turned to Ellison. "Your sister did." James slowly shifted his gaze to her. Her lips trembled. He was about to say something, but she interrupted him with an upraised finger. "No, you don't have to say anything. You just lie there and keep living. That's all I need." He grinned. And then Ellison couldn't hold back any longer. She leaned in and pressed her forehead against his hand, gripping it tighter, channeling all the words she couldn't speak. And when his fingers weakly squeezed her palm in return, she understood. He was truly here. Melania watched them silently. She knew their story had already transcended these walls. She knew that journalists would spread every detail, that politicians would exploit this moment, that some would turn it into a fairy tale while others a tool. But she didn't care. Because in that moment, in that small ward, something greater was unfolding. Something real. She turned and quietly left, leaving them alone. When the doors closed behind her, chaos met her. "Mrs. Trump, can you comment on the situation? Do you think this will change society's view of our healthcare system? What do you say to critics who claim you're using this moment for PR?" She paused. Slowly, deliberately, she looked at each of them. Then she said, "Today isn't about me. Today is about the girl who asked us all a question that no one wanted to answer." She paused again. But now that question isn't going anywhere. The reporters buzzed, camera flashes ignited once more. Inside the ward, behind those closed doors, Ellison lifted her head and looked at her brother. "You know, I wrote another prayer," she said. James squinted. "What now? Promise you'll be a good girl if I survive?" She squeezed his hand. "No." He frowned. "I just thank God for the fact that you're still breathing." She wiped her eyes and smiled. "But if you ever try to die again, I'll kill you myself." James laughed, his weak voice filled with life. And in that moment, the world ceased to exist. There was only the two of them.